What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Floyd Street's Finest. I'm your host, Jeff Greer. Of course, we are a member of the Field of 68 Media Network. Make sure that you find all of our different podcasts across the many podcasting platforms. You can also obviously stream these episodes on Twitter and elsewhere. You can find the videos on YouTube. And make sure you leave a nice rating and review. If it's not going to be nice, put your phone away. But if it's going to be nice, please leave a nice review. That's how people find this stuff on Apple Podcasts. We're not going to beat around the bush. We're going to jump right into this week's conversation. It's a guy who, quite frankly, could not have better hair. It's Kent Spencer from WHAS 11. Kent, my friend, how are you, buddy?
Man, I'm doing wonderful, and as you can see, everything is doing wonderful today.
Well, let's jump right in, Kent, because obviously you've been in this market for a while working, but obviously have plenty of familiarity with Kentucky, the landscape of Kentucky basketball. Your whole life. I mean, you know what this state lives and breathes. This Commonwealth lives and breathes, and have been around a lot of good basketball teams for a long time here in Louisville. I feel like it's kind of beating a dead horse to get into just like your overall thoughts on Louisville right now. But I'd be curious more for how you think this thing might play out over the next, 5 or 6 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, I think like last night in that Boston College game with what we saw, I mean, at least, compared to the last few games, I thought you saw improvements in stretches with this Louisville basketball team going forward. And that's all, over these next, month and a half or whatever, that's really all that you're kind of looking for. And, to see maybe where they're improving in certain areas, clearly the biggest bugaboo for this Louisville team has been turnovers. It was again last night, 19 of them. And it was pretty much, by everybody in this game. But honestly, like, we're just really just waiting on the finish line, because Louisville basketball is bad. They're historically bad. Every time they play, unfortunately, the 1940 team ends up catching some strays. And so we're just waiting on the end of the season to see what Kenny Payne is going to do on the recruiting trail, in the transfer portal, who's going to come back. I mean, honestly, like, that's really the beginning of the race. Whatever this season is just what it is. I mean, they're 2-18. They haven't won a game in the ACC. This is probably the worst team that I've ever covered in my career.
Yeah. And what I'm most curious about is, do you start to see the momentum before the end of the season? It's pretty timely here that we're doing this just after the announcement that Louisville picked up a commitment from a junior college player just in the past couple hours since we announced or since we started recording this, from a player named, I don't want to mispronounce his name. I'm assuming it's Coron Davis, JUCO from Louisiana Southwest, averaging 25.7 rebounds, 3 assists a game. To me, those numbers, I like productivity. And I've said this on previous podcasts. It's important that you're productive wherever you are. So Emmanuel Okorafor averaging a double-double in NBA Africa. It's important that at least he's productive. I don't know the level of competition, so I really don't know anything else about it. But for me, I'm not disparaging commitments, because it's good to just get guys. You need people, but I think it kind of reminds me of the cartoon where they shoot the gun and just a little flag comes out and it says bang.
Yeah, I mean, look, both of these guys are question marks. I mean,
we know nothing about them.
We know nothing about him. The only thing we know about Emmanuel Okorafor is a YouTube video. And to be quite honest, Jeff, he looked very raw on that YouTube video. And I don't think that he was playing against the best of the best.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea what he's going to be. Coron Davis, I'm going to go with Coron because that feels right to me. It feels smooth. But, yeah, he's got numbers, and the best thing about it is he's a guard, and they desperately need guards.
Yes,
because as you can see, that's been a big problem on this year's team. So he's a guard. He was desperately needed. Is he any good? No, I think both of them are question marks, to be quite honest. I don't know. You have to trust, people would have to trust, hey, Kenny Payne and that staff knows what they're doing. Unfortunately, they're 2-18 and they're in a position like they are because they didn't go get guards last summer in their first summer on the recruiting trail within the transfer portal. So that's why I think all of this is kind of a question mark until you get to the real season.
Yeah. And it's going to be a long off season. It's going to be a long off season because the trajectory here, it looked like maybe, and I think it was Mike Rutherford who tweeted like Louisville just looked like the better team for a huge portion of especially the first half against BC, only to just completely melt down in the second half. They were up by 6 at halftime. They lost by 10. So they were minus 16 in the second half. For those of you who were not expecting math on this podcast. And I can't like, people used to get so angry in my mentions on Twitter. I hardly go on Twitter anymore, as a side note. I've said that a few times now. I scroll it, but I don't tweet. I'm not interacting with people. I don't want to. But my mentions used to be brutal when Louisville would come out either at the start of a game or come out of halftime under Chris Mack and look sluggish and things would slip away from their grip. And it's happening again. So I keep coming back to like, I know, again, I don't want to beat a dead horse. I've talked about this probably every episode for like 2 months. Outside of like throwing the zone in there, and they've had some decent success there a little bit, but not like consistently sustainable success. What can we point to as in-game adjustments that show like, okay, we're getting bum rushed here? Maybe it was the response to the Kentucky start to at least get back in that game for a little while. But you're a basketball guy, you're a basketball Benny, you've known the sport for a long time. Like, am I missing something that I should be seeing here that shows some coaching prowess?
No, well, I think there's a lot at play. Like, I don't think it's just a coaching problem. I think it's also like it's an everything problem,
Oh
right?
yeah, no question.
And I don't think it's just about I don't think it's just about a lack of talent. Because I mean, you can see guys, like whether it's been guys on the call of these games. I remember I saw something with Robbie Hummel one time. They said, "Look, we are in shoot around, and we are watching Kenny Payne and this staff, and we are watching them go over specific actions that another team is going to run, or things that we want to see you do in this game, and they drill it over and over and over and over, and they get in the game." And the players do the complete opposite thing. Now that's something
that's infuriating for
it is
for
yes.
anyone in leadership. As a side note,
100%. So that like that's an element to this. And I remember in the summer you and I had talked one time, and we had said, you know what? I think that they're going to be better than what people project them to be. Like I think I even said, and by the way, I'll be the first to admit it, I was way wrong when I said they may be like, I don't think they'll make the NCAA tournament, but I would be surprised if a month left in the season, they were at least in, the conversation to maybe be on the bubble or be around the bubble. Like I said, clearly I was way wrong with that. I look at individual player performances like L. Ellis for me, like that kid is a warrior. He makes mistakes, but he has the ball in his hands 95% of the time. I look at Mike James. At the beginning of the year, he was putting up good numbers against not Power 6 teams. And then against Power 6 teams, he kind of faded. He wasn't the same kind of player. He wasn't doing it. Well, now he's become a much more consistent scorer. He's got to get his turnovers. Yeah, he's got to get his turnovers, in check. Because if you look at that game last night, like he was a big problem in crucial situations when it came to turnovers that led to points the other way against Boston College. Like there are some players that are showing signs individually. Obviously, there are players that, like Sidney Curry, whatever he was in the second half of last season, he just hasn't been that guy for whatever reason that is. Was he in the right amount of shape, at the beginning of the season? Well, that's just not on Sidney Curry. That's on the staff. Because even
Mhm.
like over the summer, and you're supposed to work these guys out. You're supposed to, have these guys ready to go and in shape. And that just hasn't been the case. So I mean, I think that you can see some development from individuals, but I think like this is a failure on all levels. But no, if you're talking about in-game strategy and what I see, I don't. But recently, Peyton Manning said the worst thing is the halftime adjustment. That's the biggest myth in all of sports.
Interesting. Okay. Okay. No, I mean, I think yes, I do think that I think there it can be misleading what that means, right? I think if you say what adjustments did you make at halftime, I think sometimes I think the perception is okay, so they go in at halftime, they tear up their game plan, and they say we're gonna throw out a 1-3-1. We're gonna throw out some, we're gonna change things entirely. I think for me, what I would say is okay, you go in at halftime and you keep giving this one guy the ball in this one spot, and he's had 3 turnovers from it. Does your team stop running that action, or does your team help him get a little bit deeper into the forecourt to catch the pass, or little things like that? Is that happening? Your defense, are there little things that you're changing at halftime that are more just kind of refreshers on the game plan? Maybe I don't know. That's what I always am curious about. And it's funny, like I'm on a group text with all my idiot friends from college, right? So they're all there. It's like a Twitter feed of just fans. Like they think the refs are out to get them. They think the ACC is out to get them. They think their own coach is out to get them. I mean, I swear to God, it sounds like I am in a basement somewhere listening to someone fire off conspiracy theories. And they were furious about a shot clock violation that Pitt had last night against Wake Forest. And they're blaming the coach. They're blaming Jeff Capel, who I have been very critical of in my lifetime watching my alma mater. The play that they ran, at least how it was executed and looked like it was drawn up, it may not have been a play. It may have been more of a concept. Point guard drives the lane, collapses the defense, kicks it out to a very good, who was hot last night, 3-point shooter with 1.5 seconds on the shot clock. The player makes the decision to be unselfish. Love that. Guy was open for a 3 that he passed to, but by the time the kid caught the ball, the shot clock violation had happened. And all my friends are like, oh, Jeff Capel's a bum, all this stuff. And it's like, that's not on Jeff Capel. And so I want to make sure that I'm being clear, because there's a couple clips from the last podcast I did with Jack Grossman that have made the rounds on the internet. I agree with you. It's an everybody issue. It is an everybody issue. I just have a problem with the message that continues to be delivered, where it seems like it's always blamed on effort by the players. And it's like, I don't think if you just work harder that Louisville is going to be like, if you just work harder, Louisville will just lose games by 6 points instead of 26 points. But I don't buy that argument. So that's where my frustration with adjustments and coaching and all that stuff comes in. I'm curious about this, Kent, and as we know, we're trying to keep these concise. So I'm moving topics here. I'm going to set it at 4.5 wins for the remainder of the season. What are you taking? They're 2-18 right now. They've got 3. So it's a stretch here. It's 4 winnable games in a row. They've got at Notre Dame, they've got Florida State, and they've got Georgia Tech. They play Georgia Tech later this year. I would say those upcoming 4 games plus the BC game, I would count as their most winnable games in the league.
I'm going to take the over.
Wow. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
I'm going to 5.
I'm going to take it's right at 5. Like
okay.
You said it at 4.5. I'm going to 5. But I'm going to take the over, just because I do think it's funny that you kind of mentioned it. Like the turnovers are still like massively a problem. We talked about it, the 19 last night. But honestly, like the way that they're turning the ball over is completely different than what the way they did earlier in the season.
Yeah.
Earlier in the season, it almost felt like they were scared to make plays
Hmm.
And then sometimes when you're scared and you're tentative, all of a sudden that leads to turnovers, like guys that just, inexplicably dribbled the ball off their foot out of
Yeah.
bounds. It was
Yeah.
almost like they
Yeah.
were scared to be in that situation. Now they're turning it over, but at least they're aggressive with some of these.
Hmm.
Like it doesn't feel like that these are tentative turnovers. It feels like they're aggressive turnovers. They're just making the wrong play, and little things like that. And it's so crazy how we're breaking this down. Like we're not breaking these things down like this is a Louisville basketball team. We have to break this down like it's a 2-18 basketball team.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's
Yeah.
it's completely different how we used to view this program. But when you look at like last night, they got down 56-50 in the second half, and they fight their way to get back in it to tie it up and even take the lead. You know that 2 months ago, a month ago, that 6 point lead would have
Yeah.
gone to 18
Yep.
like that.
Yeah.
And they
That's
fought
true.
back. Now granted, hey, they still lose the game and they're still not doing the right things, but at least last night there was some signs of life. So when you take on a Notre Dame, when you have a Georgia Tech come to your place or a Florida State come to your place, is there signs of hope that they can get a couple of these games coming in down the stretch? I think there is. Now you have to kind of continue on that path.
Hmm. Well, yeah, and you have to know what it feels like to win a game. Like that's a big part of all of this is you have to learn how to win games, and understand what it felt like to execute things correctly in the final 2 minutes. I mean, it was a mess. The final 2 minutes of that game last night were a mess, and it just turned into a 10-point game. It didn't need
And
to
and
be.
it's such a different thing, Jeff, when you watch that game back. Like Boston College had open looks from the 3 point line in the first half.
Hmm.
I think they were just 1 for 11 from the
Hmm.
3 point line in the first half. They were awful.
They had a lot of open looks last
Had a
night.
lot of open looks in the
Yeah.
first half. They just don't go down.
Hmm.
And a lot of people when they see that said, "Well, that's just good defense." Well, a lot of open looks
Hmm.
that just didn't go down. Guess
Yeah.
what? A lot of those looks they went down in the second half. They were 7 of 11 in the second half, and that's why that game looks so much different.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess for me, I think we're in the same camp. And tell me if I'm wrong. I think there's 10 million reasons why you just gotta sit down at the end of the season, lay down the gauntlet. I think it's brutal to have a short leash on someone who just started. It's absolutely brutal to say you got to turn it around big time next season. Do you, if you're the AD, if you're Josh Hurd, is your conversation performance related or is it win related? And are those two things the same to you? Like, because like Louisville, like what we're talking about here. So just in the last stretch of these games, right? The Syracuse game, everyone's like, okay, they're they lost, but they're showing some progress within the context of being a 2 and whatever team at the time. And you talk about Boston College, like you said, they lose that game in November by 20. They lose the games to Pitt and North Carolina by 35. They lost them by 20. So like it's progress, but it's progress in the context, like you said, of a 2-18 team. But do you then take in the offseason the difference between performance and results?
Well, the one thing that I think that Josh Hurd has, at a great advantage that you and I don't have is he does sit in the practices. So he
Yes.
knows
Yeah,
what's going on.
that's
We
true.
are we're guessing. He gets to see behind the curtain. So, when it comes to the job that Payne's doing and the job that this staff is doing, Hurd sees it. He he can hear it, he can see it with his own eyes. So if he feels like, there are changes that need to be made, he's going to speak up. If
Mm-hmm.
there's changes that Kenny Payne thinks that needs to be made, like, Kenny, he puts this staff together. He calls it the best staff in the country. And they go through this season. Well, currently they sit 2-18.
Mm-hmm.
Kenny Payne knows what's working. He needs to know what's working and what's not working. So if he needs to make a change, he shouldn't need the AD to come tell him that
Right.
a
That's
change
true.
needs to be made on his staff. He needs to be able to make those changes because guess what? If he can't, then he shouldn't be in the position that he currently is in. So he
Mm-hmm.
needs to be able to kind of, take his own program, back. and for any fan out there who thinks that a change will be made after this season, you're crazy. It's
Yeah.
not going to happen. The
A
only way,
change, yeah, a change initiated by the university. Yes.
yeah, the only way a change would happen, and I don't think this is going to happen,
Hmm.
is if Kenny Payne came to Josh Hurd after the season and said, you know what, I really like the NBA thing, and I want to go back to that, and I'm going to go do that. I don't think that will happen, but that's the only way that a change in this scenario happens.
And
But
that's a
yeah, I
lot of
think,
money to
look,
leave on the table for Kenny Payne, who is
yeah,
55 years old.
yeah, 100%. So,
Mhm.
like, do I think they'll have a conversation? Yeah. Do I think it's based on performance? Do I think it's based on wins? I think it's based on all of that. But
Mhm.
it's also, things that they've already seen behind the curtain of a program that we have not been privy to. Like maybe we have been in the past and been able to sit in practices and see things. Hurd has been able to see all of that. Like I said, the main thing that needs to happen is you have to go. They went out this past year and they tried to swing for the fences in the transfer portal. And they swung and they missed at just about everybody. The only one that they didn't was Brandon Huntley Hatfield. And
Yep.
I think that we all thought that he would be probably a better, more consistent low post threat for them this season that he has been, if we can be honest about that. But when it came to the guards and everything like that, we heard a lot. We heard a lot about there. We're going to get this guy. They're going to get that guy. Well, guess
Yep.
what? They didn't. You know,
Mhm.
and so they need to. I think in the transfer portal, to be quite honest with you, I think you need to go out and get a mix of guys. I think you need to go. Remember Damian Lee? I mean, everybody
Mhm.
does. He's in the NBA and he's having
Yeah.
a great career.
Yeah.
Like that kid got buckets. Now he didn't win at Drexel, but he got buckets at Drexel. But he
Mhm.
was the kind of kid, like the mentality, the personality,
Mhm.
the work ethic. He just wanted to prove it on a stage like this. You need to go out and get kids like that. Guess what?
Mhm.
It doesn't have to always be a power six kid, because a lot of those kids, in my opinion, are looking for the max NIL deals. And look,
Yep.
Louisville can deliver when it comes to NIL. We all know that. But you're talking about building a culture and a program. I think you go, even, whether it's Conference USA or something, you go get a kid that's putting up numbers on winning programs. You have to
Mhm.
get guys that know how to win
Mhm.
in here from the transfer portal. That's some of the things that I would maybe focus on in the portal going forward. Now, it may not be, some of the sexy names that will be out there at the end of the season, but you need solid guys that can put up numbers and know how to win.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think when you get to where they are, and you talk about maybe a Mike James, you can't you look. I think Mike James is going to end up being, as long as he wants to keep staying at Louisville, he'll end up being a guy who plays 3 years and becomes a really nice college player and averages double digits for you on scoring, and he can rebound more than he does in his current role. I've written about that. You get in Caleb Glenn, who's a good player. Curtis Williams comes in and can be a guy who can help you. He's a rotation guy. I think Glenn could possibly be a starter pretty early on. But if you build around guys like that, you don't have to, like, not every kid you're going to go get is going to be L. Ellis. Like, you want to swing for maybe two of those guys, but you can get rotation guys. I was super hard on Jared West when they signed him. I did not think that was a good addition. In retrospect, after learning all about the leadership and the defensive stuff and the way he was helping other guys, I know that season went south, but Jared West type players can help you on winning teams. Quan Four, Kristen Cunningham, those guys, they can help you on winning teams. Even Trey Lewis, I know things didn't really end the way that they kind of started with him. He kind of got frustrated towards the end of the year, I think, in a variety of ways. And then there was a
Well, the reason
postseason
why the
ban.
reason why he got the reason why he got frustrated, because they had a freshman by the name of Donovan Mitchell.
Yeah, Mitchell and Quentin Snyder, and those two guys really
Yeah,
kind of started to push their way into the proceedings, but or continue to in Quentin's case. But yeah, like you don't need all stars. You need a 8-9 man rotation. You need 6 guys who can truly help you build a winning culture. And then some of those guys, yeah, maybe they score 8 points a game, but you need a couple of those guys on your team who can help you, who can knock down open shots. who are not going to turn the ball over at the top of the key and lead to runouts. They're not going to throw it off your ankle. And I forgot to mention Kamari Lands. Like, I think there's a coachable talent there in Kamari Lands who can develop into somebody. So if you take those 4 guys, and I'm not saying that to throw.
Honestly,
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, honestly, with Kamari Lands, like I think he's got great potential. He just needs to be freed up. You could just tell, like it's just moving really, really fast. That's why I think offensively you see him, like sometimes he tries to dribble the air out of the ball.
Yeah.
And a lot of that, to me is you're just not really 100% sure on what you need to do. So instead of making a pass or making a drive, I'm just going to kind of explore with the dribble a little bit. If he just needs to be freed up, and for freshmen, honestly, like sometimes that comes a lot quicker than others, and sometimes it just takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, no question. Well, Kent, I would love to chat for like 2 hours. I got a meeting, so I got to ride, but hair looks as splendid.
So what you're saying is you're saying you got a thing.
I got a thing I got to get to. But it's been real. Let's do this again real soon. And, as always, I appreciate your insights into Louisville basketball.